Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Marketing Corner with Casper and Jen. And tonight we're going to take a little turn off of paid ad growth hacking motorway and go onto the content motorway.
Yeah, it's all part of making marketing work, right?
It's all part of marketing. But our last episode, we got kind of tech heavy in paid advertising on LinkedIn. And now we're going to be moving on a slightly different track, talking about content clusters in your content strategy. So Casper, why don't you give us a little overview of what that is?
Yeah, definitely. So essentially what we want to talk about here is what you typically refer to as your content cluster strategy. It also ties very well with our pillar page structure. And it's essentially the same, just slight differences. From a very high level understanding, it's essentially instead of just making what a lot of people do, mistakenly do, is that they just produce content, like for the sake of producing content. And they do like, okay, let's talk about this topic. Hey, our buyer persona wants to talk about this. Let's talk about this. And yes, some of that tying into what your buyer persona wants to hear about, definitely a good idea. At the end of the day, content is made for the same purpose as everything else in marketing. It's to generate leads, right? You want to, and especially when it comes to content, you want to produce it with a purpose. So you want to do it with the purpose of generating leads. And in the end of the day, most of the time when you produce content, you do it to rank on Google. Let's be real. Like that is why you should produce most of your content, is that you want to be found on Google. And the cluster strategy, content cluster strategy, is made specifically for that. So what you do is you identify keywords. You start at a keyword level. You do that in multiple different ways. What I've done in the past is typically if there's no foundation, what I do is I grab from the competitors. So I say, okay, what are the competitors that we look at? What are they organically and paid Google ads? What are they paying for and ranking for? And then I just extract all that data from Ahrefs or whatever tool. Then I take that data and then I say, okay, what is these different keywords that would be interesting to us, that has good volume, competition makes sense, CPC, all that jazz. Look at it and makes sense. And then you group it together into clusters, keyword clusters. And then as an example, it could be a cluster in United FinTech. We have a cluster we call it fair value, that talks about one of the products. We have fair value pricing. And then there's multiple keywords. So the main content or keyword we focus on is fair value. So the supporting keywords to that is fair market value, it's intrinsic value of stocks, calculating fair market value, et cetera, right? So all these different keywords that tie into the same place. So that's essentially how we do a content cluster. And then by doing that, you suddenly find a way to say, okay, these are the things we want to cover. And if we do that, if we produce content that talks about these topics, then we're in the right direction of talking about the things that people search for. And that's the important part. People actually search for and find useful. And also we find it makes sense to our business. So there's a bunch of different good things about it. And then the pillar page you can add as on top of that. That's kind of in my opinion, that's a layer on top of that. Because once you have your content cluster, then your pillar page is essentially using, then you want to make the best piece of content within this topic. So let's take fair value. So let's say fair value, that's the topic. Then we create a pillar page, so massive, so extensive typically. And then it encapsulates all these different content pieces. It then spins out content. So let's take the fair value piece. Then it talks about calculating fair value. Well, maybe that's an article in and of itself. That's a blog post in itself. And then the blog post is, let's say, 600 words or 1,000 words. And then it links back to the pillar page, which is 3,000 words. Huge, right? And then suddenly you have a big piece of content and has all these smaller pieces of content supporting it. And Google picks up on this. It's very important. Google picks up on this. And then you suddenly really become an authority within a space. So that's the very short version of how you want to do it. I've never written a blog post in my life myself. So I love the technical strategic part behind it. But I've seen it work multiple times, and I've helped a lot of people do it now, and it still works. It's an actually a quite old tactic, but it's still amazing.
That's really interesting because we do something similar, but we start at the other end. So, but I like the working with what people are Googling anyway, what people are searching for, and building from that. We did something similar, but we identified our core sort of three core areas we want to dominate. And this is based on our mission and the product and what we're trying to do in the world. Tech and employee empowerment and efficiency was the third pillar. And so what we did is actually we worked with a great PR agency. Shout out to Fire on the Hill. You should check them out. They're really great. And so we kind of said these are the core pillars. So we're going to make content for these pillars, and that kind of spiraled out, like you said with your clusters. But at the same time, we need to be featured in magazines where this is a core element. So we need to be talked about in tech magazines. We need to be talked about in employee empowerment articles, and we need to be talked about in efficiency wording. And we need to use our social media to make sure we're involved in these conversations. We're retweeting people, we're commenting on other articles. And this is where we had the ability to use a PR agency who could help us manage all that, because it is very time consuming, but to make sure that we are involved in those conversations that are happening, that are related to our product and related to the space that we want to dominate. And then we would look at, of course, Google Analytics, we would look at Ahrefs, we would look at what people are talking about and make sure that these clusters that spiral off are hitting the right notes and resonating with the right people. And then what content are they engaging with? Let's build an infographic from there. Let's do a webinar series off of that. And we kind of made sure that, but we didn't want to go too crazy and too far out. We always wanted to stick to kind of the three core areas that we wanted to dominate.
Yeah, but I think that makes perfect sense. That's totally fine. And you took it a step further with introducing PR right to a mix. So I think what I've used this for is I used to draw it up when I had to draw it on a whiteboard in three bubbles. So you first take all your Google Ads data that could be from yourself and from the competitors, and then you take all your organic data, your Google Search Console, analytics, again from also competitors. And then the last part, and that's the one you introduce here, is the vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, like if you're especially, I remember early days of Templafy, we were like, okay, we want to dominate template management. There's template management's not a thing, so we want to make people like that's also part of it. Sometimes you have to, as a marketeer, introduce the topic to the world, right? So that's what I call the vision part. And that has to be a part of it. So you gather data from these three pools of data, and that's what comprises into at least what I've done, like my content cluster strategy. And for me, then it shapes a lot of things. Like it shapes the direction of what the content you're producing. So your organic team, your content team, what pieces of blogs, SEO pages, all that stuff. What direction is that going? And the good thing is also that it aligns perfectly well with your Google Ads team, your search team, right? Because then they also know, okay, these are the clusters. These are just like word typologies we should be focusing on. And having this like unified approach, just with everything else, works fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do when I do this is also split all the keywords, because then by the end of the day you also have a list of keywords, right? That's also the goal of this. So you have a content cluster, but in that content cluster, typically I do a mind map. So we have a mind map where it's like, okay, this is the keyword. What keyword springs out from that, and what keyword springs out from those keywords? And then so you always have, like, for your content team, hey, go focus on these, but you can also split that into even 3 pillars or more, and then say, okay, what are the purely organic terms? So an organic term would be something like, let's use fair value, would be, what is fair value? When you're searching for what is fair value, you might be a student, right? Or you might be someone exploratory. You're not really looking to buy. Well, let's say you're searching for fair value pricing software, right? If you're looking for that, you're probably looking for a software to solve a solution, or maybe you look for software solution to make it even more. There's a high intent behind it. So that's a keyword that you want to put Google Ads money into. But the first one you don't want to put Google Ads into, but it's really important to, because there could be a lot of potential in that other. So splitting that is actually good. Then of course there's some keywords that both want to be on, but there's also that natural split there that you can create with this.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And again, having those keywords, and you can use tools to help you come up with relevant keywords as well, if you're not the most creative person on the planet. So sometimes in Google, for example, they can do suggested keywords based on a particular topic and things like that, which could be helpful.
And you typically, if you work in a marketing department, if you're a one-man shop, you use Ahrefs. Ahrefs is my preferred tool on this. I've used SEMrush before, perfectly fine. I don't necessarily have any. I use Ahrefs. So, but whatever tool it is, these tools can get you really, really far. and you'll be, if you have never done stuff like this before, you'll be shocked at how much data you can get from your competitors and other people. And it's just a really good way to work. Without dropping names, like in this year that United FinTech has existed, since we introduced this strategy, and it's only half a year old because that's where I hired my first content person, Simona. Shout out to her. She's awesome.
I know her. Hi.
No, she's awesome. Hey, Simona.
Thanks,
No, but we've actually we are outperforming some of the best Danish B2B SaaS startups in Denmark when it comes to content, and that's just because we're doing this strategy. They're not. Like it's sometimes that simple. Yes, I can give all these sorts of reasons, but like I did the analysis the other day on a team. Helped a little bit. I think they're. If I'm not, I think there are 13 people. Don't put me on this. I think there are 13 people, and they've existed for a bunch of years, 5-10 years, and they've done content for all that time. And we outdid their content. We have more traffic, we have more rankings in half a year, a little bit more than half a year that they've done for 10 years. And that's because there's never been a strategy. There's never been like we're just producing content for the sake of content.
But I think also having a strategy helps keep your content team sane.
They love
because
it.
It's so easy to get pulled in so many different directions, especially when you're a content person. 1 minute you're doing a case study, then you're doing LinkedIn posts, then you're doing a blog. Like it's so easy to be pulled around. And so it's so important to have a strategy to help give them at least guideposts of like, this is the kind of area we need to stick. These are the kind of words we're trying to use, and if you're being asked to do something way over here, they're going to have a really good reason why you should be focusing on that and not this.
And I think you bring up an extremely valid point, and that's also something I've experienced in FinTech. And I recently consulted a Swedish startup, I can mention, but scale up, and they didn't have a content strategy. And when you don't have a real strategy for what you do, like you say, hey, you want to pursue thought leadership content, right? Like thought leadership piece content and stuff like that.
Make me a thought leader. Okay.
Bullshit, right? You want to produce bullshit content. No, but you want to produce content, right? Then you end up in the you have no arguments bracket, where it's like sales go and say, hey, why don't we write about this? And then you say, okay, it's good. And then suddenly it's sales who dictates everything. And a perfect case study from FinTech ourselves is that the best performing blog posts in terms of traffic and actual also generating leads. Let's see if they close. We haven't seen that yet. But is actually the one that sales hated the most. And the one they like the most is the one of not the worst performing, but one of the worst performing ones. And it's nothing to do with the fact that sales doesn't know people or stuff like that. It's definitely not that. It's just Google knows people better than we do. Like the thing people search for, that is golden. That should be your guiding star. Yes, there's sometimes things people don't search for. You can make content that goes beyond that, but as a foundation, should be where you start. I have so many examples of the people producing content and never actually getting results, and also like and you brought like this thing about like giving your content team direction, but also means that once you give your content team direction, they're just like you and I on a lot of things. They produce content and like to write stuff and more than we do maybe, but they also like to have a goal, right? They also like, hey, and they also want to see traction. Now you can literally show them traction. Okay, we're ranking on more of these keywords. We're getting more traffic. We're getting higher session duration, lower bounce rate, more demo conversions, more guide, blah, 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 all that jazz. Right? All these things you can actually track and see, okay, it's going good. Like we're ranking on the keywords we want to rank on instead of just like we're suddenly ranking for this keyword that has nothing to do with what we wanted to achieve, right?
And that plays into KPIs, right? And that's why you have to have KPIs and key metrics that are things that content can firstly achieve, because when you're making your content team based on MQLs, that's not going to help them in any way. And also things that kind of show how they're contributing to the revenue being generated. So we can see that our organic traffic has increased because of XYZ. That organic traffic is leading to money being generated. It's reducing our CAC because it's free. So it's a great way of getting, I think sometimes branding teams and content teams kind of get left behind in terms of KPIs because it's so business focused, but the focus is generating leads, generating SALs, generating SQLs, generating, higher value customers. but actually they can do that, but you have to frame it in a way that is achievable for the content team and the branding people so that they can just
Yeah,
run with it. And
definitely.
that's, yeah.
And there's synergy effects, right? Like so one of the things about like content strategy and content in general is that content is the ultimate long game, right? Together with thought leadership, which is kind of like the pillar and out there. Then for me at least, content and ranking organically, what I call SEO, right? Search engine optimization. That's the long game. It's the
Hmm.
best ROI of any marketing investment you'll ever make. Like in terms of channels, like LinkedIn, Facebook, all that jazz. I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. Will never come close to that. Let's be
Hmm.
just be real. Like the ROI of content is the best. It just takes time. Like it
Yeah.
takes a bunch of
And
time.
sometimes people who
And
don't get marketing don't understand, and
don't
they
give it
want
time, right?
immediate results. And yeah, it
And
doesn't really work
you
that
can
way.
take us as an example. We've done extremely well, and we yes, we've generated leads. We haven't closed anything organic yet. That will come in this year, hopefully. But
Hmm.
and we're half a year in doing our content journey, right? And we've done amazing. But not every company does amazing. And then you're looking at a trajectory of like at least 2 years before you start seeing good results.
Yeah.
Oof, that requires a lot of ice in your belly to be able to do that, right? Like
Yeah.
because there will be someone who knocks at your door and says, "After you, Casper, we're not seeing anything. Like, what's happening?"
Yeah.
Right?
Well, what the hell was that all for? And
Yes.
we found also when we were doing a website rebrand, we were focusing a lot on SEO and things like that, technical SEO as we were rebranding. And we were given a KPI of like, we need to see the hockey stick within 3 months. And it's like, no, 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 no,
That's
no,
bullshit.
no. You're going to see the hockey stick in 18 months, maybe 24 months. But the fact that we haven't done it at all for 5 years is why you're not seeing anything right now. So like, just, you got to trust the process. And if you have managers who get marketing, you're lucky and they wait and they understand and they let you do what needs to be done. But if you
Mm,
don't, then yeah, you're going to get under pressure. But I think also the content cluster strategy is a great way to show there is thought process behind the
one hundred
content
percent.
strategy. So you can say to management, you're not going to see anything right away, but here is the strategy and here's why we're doing this. It's not just like, what should we write today?
Exactly.
And
Like
that at least can buy you time and kind of get them on side.
exactly, and we actually used it exactly for that here in United FinTech because we have some people that have extremely experience within financial services and worked in sales, but they haven't worked with new style marketing that you and I do, right? Like digital marketing in general. They never really work with that. So understanding just in general how Google works and how you content plays into like Google, that's been a real challenge. They're very open about it, but they've also been open about the fact they don't know. So designing the strategy and say like, okay, this is why we do what we do. That's been so good because now what it essentially did was essentially say, okay, this is why we do what we do, and then the questions were reduced from I don't know 1 million to 2 or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so every time a content piece would come out before, it'd be like, why are we doing this? Blah blah blah, boom boom boom. Hey, we should do this. Boom. Now suddenly we're reduced to like, okay, I like this. Maybe you could change this. I don't like this part. This doesn't make sense or whatever, right? Instead of being a strategic question, it became more of like a factual question if there's maybe
Mm-hmm.
some factual stuff wrong. And that's also the point of like elevates this talk maybe to a little bit higher this of doing strategy, something like just having a strategy is not only for your singular purpose but also for the rest of the organization, like knowing what direction you're moving in, like why are you doing what you do. And it's
And
not
we
like you should prove every day, but it helps, it makes your life easier.
Yes, and we go more in depth in that on stakeholder management and marketing, episode 12, available in
Yeah,
the
tuna, it's
archives.
good, it's good, it's a good one.
It is a good one, and it's something that I think every marketer can relate to, right?
I want to add one thing.
Yeah.
So what I've introduced, like the content cluster strategy, is a foundation strategy, right? So it's if you don't have any strategy today, then it's perfect as a foundation strategy. But you also want to support it with distribution.
Mhm.
This is a golden rule that I always go by. Like a lot of people, they spend most of their time producing the content, where actually they should spend most of their time distributing, right? Eighty
Mhm.
20 rule. But what I mean with distribution is there's a bunch of different ways, but one of the ways I think still works, and I'm not ashamed to say it, is link building.
Mhm.
So essentially, buying what you do is you get a typically you get a SEO agency. You can do it yourself. It's a little bit more requires a little bit more, but typically you get a SEO agency, and sometimes they're too ethical to do it. Most people do it, but essentially what they do is that they buy links to your
Mhm.
to your articles, right? Like so they get some big blog to say, hey, United FinTech is the best at real time market data or whatever, right? And then
Mhm.
they create a link to you, and that has a lot of link juice and stuff like that. That stuff still works. in the future, it will probably not work, but we've been saying that for 20 years. So, you know, like, you never know. Like, does it still work today? Absolutely. Would I still be doing it? Am I still doing it today? Yes, absolutely. Would I still be doing it today? It's 100%. So,
Absolutely.
especially for markets like the US, it's still incredibly important to do link building. Like, I would almost say impossible to do without. Of course, there's cases probably that proves me wrong, but you
But
have to do it probably.
I've worked with building agencies, and the good ones will give you kind of a range of risk, right? It's kind of super low risk, medium risk, super high risk that you're going to get caught, and Google's going to come down on you. But we went kind of low risk, and we still saw that our domain ranking went from 15 to 62 in like 8 months,
No time.
9 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And part of that also is content sharing. So we will have like good content, and we use an agency to kind of find good sites with good domain rankings where we can put this content on. And sometimes money isn't even it's more, we've got this content, it's related. But one thing we do not do is we do not have links on our site. And that's something that is, I think, really important. And a lot of marketers ask about this, right? Like, should we also put the link on our website? If you can get away with not doing that, I would recommend not doing that, because you do not want to drive traffic away from your website. So just remember that when you're if you decide to go down this route and you're negotiating.
Exactly. You want to do valuable links, right? Like, when links make sense, then it's okay, in my opinion. Like, because also, like, Google keeps deciding, like, if there's no outgoing links, sometimes that's also actually a negative. Like, because Google go like, okay, that's why are you not? do you think you're the ultimate expert? I don't think that's how the bot thinks, but that's kind of the point, I think. Like, link building is a big one. And you said like social sharing, right? I think people put a little bit too much emphasis on social sharing unless you go all in. I think it's like an all in or nothing, in my opinion. Because a lot of people, what they do is we just share on social. We actually just do that. I'm not here to play an angel here, but where we just like we share on social, and then we repurpose content, so we reuse it again and stuff. That's also part of it. So that's the distribution. But you could do so much more, right? Like, you can do like all this, like, hey, go to Reddit forums, go to Quora questions, find Facebook groups, find LinkedIn groups maybe, or have your salespeople share the stuff over push it. There's so much stuff like community management in that part that can elevate your content, really make it even better. So that part is a big part of the success as well. But in my opinion, you should start with a foundation, and then all this fancy distribution should be there. And once you are capable and got to a point where you can do it, then it should be a big part. But you have to get to that point first.
Absolutely. And if you're a one-person army, that's real hard to do. So
that's
maybe stick to So maybe find where your core market is, and we talked about that in the previous episode when we talked about LinkedIn paid advertising. Like, know who is on what channel, because if you don't have the resources, you got to just stick with what works. And sometimes Quora is not where you need to be. Sometimes it is, and
and I think Medium is a good example. Like, we mentioned Stefan. I think he did a test once when he released a blog post on growthhackers.com, which is like this site for growth hackers, like a forum thing. They also have a tool, and I think they got so much traffic out of it, like so much traffic, multiple downloads. I'm not sure if one of the best things he ever did. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's definitely good. And I'm like, that makes sense, right? He made a post specifically for that forum and put it in there and distributed it there, and then he shared, reshared. That's smart, and that's distribution at its finest, right? Yeah, it doesn't have to be fancy or anything.
Absolutely. Cool. Any last
thoughts? No, I think this kind of covers it. Like, it's a way to put your content into like, to have a strategy around it, like creating like take the time to make your mind map. But making a mind map is actually really good. It makes it really visual. Suddenly you understand all the things you can talk about. Because you can talk about the whole world, right? So you have to narrow it down somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of being visual with everything I'm trying to do to help keep it organized, right, and stay on task.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks,
all right,
guys.
well, hope that was helpful, and we'll see you at the next episode.
Yeah, take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.